The battlefield was silent, not the kind of silence that came from peace, but the kind that follows slaughter. Smoke rose from the ruins, the scent of iron and fire hung in the air, and the world itself seemed to mourn. In the center of the chaos, surrounded by shattered banners and broken blades, sat a throne, carved not from gold or marble, but from blackened stone and bone. It was a throne born from war, and upon it sat the one they once called Nothing. Once long ago, that same man had been a shadow among giants, laughed at, dismissed, humiliated by those who believed themselves untouchable. He had no army, no kingdom, no name worth remembering, but he had something far more dangerous than power. He had purpose, and purpose, when tempered by pain, becomes unstoppable. They mocked him when he fell. They laughed when he bled. They told him he would never rise again. But they never understood what happens to a man when he runs out of things to lose. When every wound turns into fuel, and every betrayal sharpens the blade of his will. He disappeared for years. While they feasted, he trained. While they built castles, he built conviction. While they fought for crowns, he forged armor from the ashes of his failures. And when he returned, he was no longer a man. He was a storm. They first saw him in the east, a hooded figure walking through a wasteland. Rumors spread faster than fire. Villages destroyed overnight. Armies vanished. The Shadow King, they whispered, the warlord of the abyss. He never claimed a name, because he didn't need one. His legend carried its own voice. When he finally stood before the city that had once cast him out, the people trembled. The gates that had once shut in his face now opened out of fear. He walked through those same streets, not as a beggar, not as a fool, but as judgment incarnate. Every brick, every whisper, every face from the past felt his presence like a shadow crawling up their spine. The council that once laughed at his dreams now knelt before him, and with a cold, measured calm, he said only 3 words. You remember me. They did, and that was enough. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about transformation. Because power built on hatred burns fast, but power forged in silence and discipline endures forever. He didn't destroy them in rage. He didn't scream or curse or boast. He simply took everything back, piece by piece, kingdom by kingdom, until the same world that once spat on his name now trembled to speak it. Yet even as the fire of conquest roared around him, there was no smile on his face. Victory didn't bring peace. It brought clarity. He realized that the throne he sat upon wasn't built from the bones of his enemies, but from the sacrifices of the man he once was. The one who believed that kindness could conquer cruelty. The one who believed that respect could be begged for. That man was gone, burned out of existence. One night, under a sky split by lightning, his general came to him and asked, "My lord, what drives you now? You've won every war. Every enemy kneels. What else is there?" The warlord's crimson eyes glowed beneath his helm, and his answer was simple and terrifying. The war was never against them. It was against who I used to be. That was his truth. He wasn't fighting men. He was fighting the weakness they once saw in him. He was fighting the reflection that once looked away in shame. The voice that said, "You are not enough." Every victory, every conquest was a strike against that old self. And in that pursuit, he became something beyond human, an idea, a force of nature born from pain, patience, and precision. There were those who sought to stop him, kings who united under banners of light and justice. They spoke of morality, of peace, of order, but beneath it all was fear, because they knew that the rise of one man could expose the weakness of all. They called him a tyrant, a monster, a shadow that devoured hope, and perhaps he was all those things. But in a world built on lies, sometimes monsters are the only ones brave enough to tell the truth. He faced their armies without hesitation. When the sky turned red with fire and the earth split beneath the weight of their armies, he stood alone, and the world watched as the unthinkable happened. One man against 1,000, one will against an empire. And when the dust settled, it was his banner that still stood. They asked him afterward, "How did you win?" And he answered, "Because I never fought for victory. I fought because I refused to kneel." That was the difference. The kings fought to protect what they had. He fought because he had nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous being alive. As the years passed, his empire grew. But so did the darkness inside him. He ruled with wisdom, yet fear followed him like a shadow. Not because of cruelty, but because of truth. People feared what they couldn't understand. A man who could not be broken, bribed, or begged. He had become legend, and legend is always lonely. One night, as the firelight flickered across his armor, he stood before the mirror. The reflection that stared back at him was not the broken man of the past, nor the monster of legend. It was something in between, a man forged from pain, but searching for meaning. He reached up, removed his helmet, and whispered to the reflection, "Was it worth it?" The silence answered him, because deep down, even victory feels empty when it costs your soul. But then a memory, a laugh, a cruel smirk from long ago, the faces of those who said he'd never rise. And in that moment he smiled, not out of joy, but out of understanding. Yes, it was worth it, because some wars are not fought to win. They're fought to prove you were never defeated. Years later, they still tell a story, not as a tale of vengeance, but as a warning. They say that if you push a man too far, if you strip him of everything, he will build an empire from the ashes. He will return not as a victim, but as a storm. And when he comes, mercy will be the first casualty. They call him many names: the Black Warlord, the Emperor of Shadows, the Lord of the Broken Crown. But the name that echoes through time, whispered in fear and awe, is the Unforgotten. Because he never forgot, not the pain, not the betrayal, not the laughter. He carried it like a crown of thorns, and every scar became part of his armor. He taught the world a truth they would never forget. Those who are broken can still become kings. Now his throne sits high above the world, carved from obsidian and flame. The molten cracks beneath it glow like veins of fire, and the skulls of fallen tyrants guard its base. He doesn't smile, he doesn't speak, he just sits watching, because the war may be over, but the hunger never ends. For somewhere out there, another fool is laughing at someone's pain. Another crowd is mocking a fallen man. And somewhere another shadow is being born. Another soul ready to turn pain into power. And when that time comes, when the next dark warlord rises, he will look upon this throne of ashes, and he will understand that the world doesn't reward the loud, the cruel, or the proud. It crowns those who endure, those who burn, those who never kneel. Because in the end, kingdoms crumble, names fade, and power rots. But willpower never dies. The throne of ashes, a legend carved from pain, a testament to the unbroken, and a warning to those who mistake kindness for weakness. Because one day, that kindness might return wearing armor darker than night.